Conscious of Economics and Urban Farm Project, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff. Anyway, today the topic is kind of going to be around horses, animals, and people as animals. Excuse me. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about with mammals is that they have the ability, let's just say, to adjust themselves, but they have to be put into the right lifestyle and environment. So that's why like things like yoga are super good for people, because it actually, extends and pulls apart the muscle, so that the bone can actually go back where it belongs. And so yoga is a system that actually extends the tissues. So when you're dealing with mammals, we have issues with our tissues. And say, for example, your tissues get too tight, say in your lower part of your leg or your foot or your forearm. Most likely what's going to happen is you're going to reach out and grab something, or you're going to step down off a curb and fracture your bones in your lower part of your leg, or fracture the bones in your arm, or the bones are going to pop out, right? Dislocate, and wreak all kinds of havoc. Well, that's because the tissues are more like steel bands, and they have a lot of knots and toxins in them, sometimes mineral soot, lots of other things that have happened. So those tissues have to be opened up and stretched to their full capacity so that the bones will go back and realign themselves. And it's kind of a painful process once you've gotten really kind of effed up. But the human body is designed to walk, to move, like we're talking 24/7. The human body are like hunter-gatherers, not, sit in your chair and watch TV all day, right? You can see where that's going to head. You're going to get more and more twisted, and you're going to have less mental health, emotion. You're not going to have a good emotional health. You're not going to be able to have a good outlook. You're going to be angry and fatigued and irritated most of the time, your waking space. And your body is going to have a lot of physical pain, and it's not going to be symmetrical. So, you're going to have like wobbling when you walk and a lot of these, other situations. And plus then you start to get a lot of weight gain and fluid. So because the lymphatics can't work properly because they're tied up inside that, steel band knots of tissue. And so things are not working properly. So your body can't eliminate the toxins it needs to and the extra fluid. Those are just some of the symptoms. So, when I look at little kids, and they're fresh, they're really stretched out. When they sleep, they sleep like fully stretched out, with like their arms over their heads, or, in this position or that position. They don't have to curl up because they're usually in a bed that's much larger than they are. So one of the things I tell like my physical clients is that they really need to have a much bigger bed than they have. And if they need to sleep long ways across it, so that you can fully extend. So, your pillow isn't against the wall, and this is as far as you can extend, that you have more extension, and you can roll over and keep your arms over your head and fully stretch out your legs and your limbs. And that can also help to release, trauma, because obviously the more trauma we have, the more, fetal we're doing, and it's really hard to break that apart. Okay, so dogs can have the same thing. I've seen a lot of dogs that have been sheltered for long periods of time, and or people have put them in crates, and they have, hip problems, and they have poo-poo problems, and they have digestive problems, and they have a lot of other issues because same thing, a dog is made to run. So a dog needs a pretty good space in order to be able to full scale run back and forth. And then the dog, through extension and then coming back, can actually adjust its own body and heat up and soften and stretch those tissues. In horses. So this is a really serious thing, and a lot of people are really gonna really hate this because I go out and I work with horses, and this is one of the things that is really difficult for people to deal with. So everybody wants a horse, and all these people, especially here in Nevada, they like to keep these horses in small pens. They do not have large open pastures where the horses can actually play and that they can run and extend themselves at full speed. So a horse has got to have a long, long way to run to get into full extension where its legs are, totally going out and back, out and back. So when that happens and the muscle tissues heat up, the body extends itself, all the bones start to adjust back into place. And then it's all stretched out. So if you're going to have a horse, the horse really deserves to have at least, once a day going out into a full extension and having like a pasture running space. Even if you ride a horse, it's still not going into full extension. It's still terribly controlled. And, they get all kinds of issues. They get all pent up kind of issues. I see all the horses I ever work on, even if people say, oh, my horse doesn't have any symptoms, but it doesn't like, the headgear right now or whatever else. Usually the horse's neck is like so out of, let's talk about subluxation, herniated or compressed discs. And the humans don't even realize this because the way the animals express pain is more to kind of like, emotionally sometimes like attitudinal, or they don't want to eat, so they could be pissier or more lethargic, and this is how they're expressing that they're not feeling good, their structure is not good. Once the structure starts to collapse, then disease sets in because now the brain that communicates with the body through electronic or electrical impulse through the nerve passages no longer can, those places are disconnected and the brain can't get into those places anymore and tell it to regenerate. So now you have disease and aging and early death. So I really hate when I have to go out and people have a lot of their horses in a small pen. And small pen is, even ones that people think are pretty big for their property. But they need ones that they can actually run and fully extend. And, I don't know if we can train horses like, oh, hey, little horsey, come on out here. And then, take his gear off and then let him run through the desert until he's done and then come back to us, right? Like a dog. Wouldn't that just be the greatest? That would be like such an easy situation. For horses. So I think horses get the brunt, especially of the structural problems and the short pins, more than any other mammal, especially because they're in captivity and humans are in captivity too. You have to realize that. And we've assumed being in captivity, which is even more frightening. Okay, so I had a couple things on here. So let's talk about, so I just want to talk about things that can happen. Sometimes chiropractic adjustments on animals and people can help to reboot systems, get stuff open and get the processes moving. It may not stay because there may not be enough physical activity, that needs to go along with it in order to keep it stayed. So, and I think most Americans, either are not really getting enough of the kind of physical activity they need, which is walking, running, jumping, yoga would be really beneficial, stuff to help the lymphatic system and the body heat up, and also use those core muscles. And, it helps your brain. So when you're feet are walking, they're connecting up to the brain. So that your brain builds a better relationship with what's going on in your bottom part of your body. So jumping, the same thing. Yoga, the same thing. Hand-eye coordination. All these different things. So, like say for humans, if you can't do yoga right away, then, you have to build hand-eye coordination, which builds, bringing back your limbs back to your brain, where your brain can have a relationship with them, because your brain may have been cut off from your legs for 20 years before you start to have back pain. Okay, so and rebooting. So like the only thing that I know that is a rebooting system, a full rebooting system that reboots the brain into whole brain, and it drops, it releases trauma, muscle memory, adjust the body back into its alignment. Also puts the body into alkaline state immediately, and releases like 95% of stress. So that's the only thing that is on this planet that I've actually seen is a hands-on technique called Alpha Biotics Unification Process, which I call reboot. So, but it's an old ancient, Alpha Biotics, founded a center to teach it, but it actually is a really ancient, very ancient art from Korea, actually. So, getting some adjustments or rebooting, stuff like that could go a long way. And I think I might be one of the only people that developed a reboot, because it's taught, Alpha Biotics is taught for humans. And then, you branch out into animals. And I don't really know anybody else that's actually doing Alpha Biotic reboot on horses other than me, especially in the United States. I mean, all the work that I do is an anomaly. So I'm a total anomaly. There aren't people like me that you're going to be readily able to find. We're few and far between. Okay, so, but it doesn't mean that you can't look to help your horse or your dog or your friend. Okay, so let's talk about food foresting, food foraging, and we'll talk about it like in animals, right? Because there's something I just recently noticed, having been working on some horses here in Nevada. It's a pretty much hay feed, and like no pasture. But if you want to have horses, you should really buy land where you can like develop a pasture, so that at least half of the year they can eat fresh grass, and the weeds, which not all are poison. Some of them have tons of nutritional benefit, actually more nutritional benefit than most foods that you would grow in a garden. But so when horses are in that live green pasture, number one, they're getting a lot of water, and they're getting a lot of nutrient density, because there are certain nutrients you can't get out of food that's old. The same goes for lettuce. I mean, I tell people this all the time. Even your organic lettuce that you're buying in the store is old. Lettuce, leafy plants lose, bulk of their or all of their nutrition within 3 days after they're picked. And so most of the stuff is like a week old coming to your grocery store. So no nutritional value. However, if you were growing wild varieties of lettuce or herbs or things like that, or in your garden growing certain things, you would get a lot more nutrition. So now if you go to a pasture, like just for a horse, you have so much diversity, because seeds and things have blew in there to grow together, as you're watering it as a pasture. So one of the things that I've been noticing a lot recently about a lot of the horses here in the Reno area is their fur is really terrible. And just, looking at their eyes and things like that, and I'm realizing that they are super, essential fatty acid depleted because they are kind of on a full, alfalfa hay diet. So there's a plant, purslane. It's sort of rubbery. All over the United States and all over the world, there are different varieties of it that grow. It's 100%. Here in the desert, here in the Reno area, it is the number one highest, probably nutritionally dense plant that grows in the area. You'll see it trying to grow up through cracks in parking lots at apartment buildings. But once it starts getting going, it's amazing. And you can eat that as a person. You can pull it apart, wash it really well, chop it up, put it on top of your salad if you have some naturally growing. Obviously, you don't want to eat it if it has a lot of animal poop on it, right? You want to stay away from things that touch poop, any kind of poop. So at least fresh poop. But you could have an area where you're cultivating it, maybe transplant some of it you find, put it in your garden. Then that way you can, work with it more kind of, as cultivating a, pasture of it or whatever else. So the other thing too is, like, say it's in a big pasture where horses are eating, where the grass is green, there's all these kinds of great weeds. They would be getting more than they need in essential fatty acids, which helps their brain. I mean, your brain can't even fire without essential fatty acids. People get it all wrong. They're like, oh, yeah, you gotta eat a lot of meat and a lot of meat fat so your brain will fire. Yeah. So essential fatty acids pretty much comes from plant-based diet, come from a plant-based deal. Like coconut oil is like the highest in all forms of essential fatty acid you could get if you get it raw and even eat it. It'll totally heal your brain. It'll heal your skin. It'll heal so many things in your body. And so let's talk about essential fatty acids. So you have a horse that has wounds that just will not heal up. Lack of essential fatty acids. I think it's laurylic acid, I think, heals infection. I think that's it. Laurylic. Anyway, if your horse isn't getting enough essential fatty acids that breaks down into these smaller, essential fatty acids, then your horse is not going to be able to fight infection. So essential fatty acids is like one of the number one things that you need in your body in order to fight infection. Also, one of the number one things to get your brain firing, to cure Alzheimer's. Like essential fatty acids they go across the board to keep you from getting diabetes, to manage your diabetes. Like every like important function that you have all goes back to an essential fatty acid that you're not eating and your horse is not eating. So when you're feeding them dry hay, there's like no essential fatty acid at all in that. If they were in the pasture, they would be eating purslane, which has the highest per volume 369 essential fatty acids. So the horse would be getting food to help it, so you don't have to take it to the vet so much, right? I mean, every kind of function that you have is going to all go back to essential fatty acids, and they're going to be plant-based essential fatty acids, right? A lot of them come from, purslane, the plant. Hemp has a super high per volume essential fatty acids. I'm not talking marijuana. I'm talking the hemp plant. Hemp oil, eating raw, unprocessed, like hemp oil, like maybe hand pressed. Same with coconut oil. And you could diversify your diet and then get yourself like a flaxseed, 3, 6, and 9 omega essential fatty acid. Coconut oil has all ranges, every range that there is for essential fatty acid. It's almost like the only complete that I know about. But there you go. So you could even grow hemp plants, and you could, cut little stalks off for your horses too, so that you could get them some essential fatty acids, right? Fresh, chopped right then, hand them over there, put it on top of their hay. Grow purslane. You can even pick those, make sure they get, some every day, or, create a pasture. So this is a thing about horses and dogs. And, my dog, she's been trained really well, because when we go out in nature, I teach her the things like she can eat. And back when she was a baby and I rescued her, she was in a meth house where they made meth. She was addicted to the drugs from the air, and she had a lot of really bad health problems, and she had a lot of stomach and diarrhea problems, because she didn't really have proper nutrition. She never had any essential fatty acids. They barely fed her. She ate the garbage. She ate baby diapers. So one of the things I did with plants is I had a pineapple sage plant that I grew in the house and a couple other ones that would help her stomach. And she could go in the bedroom and nibble off leaves and then go drink some water. So if we didn't have access to grasses, so when we go out in nature or other places, then, I show her, I pull the grasses, show her what they smell like. And so she knows what the good grasses are, not the toxic grasses. So whenever we go out in nature, she smells out all the good grasses and will eat them. And so she's also become a connoisseur of medicinal plants because, there was a few that I grew when she was a baby. But, you can train animals to do this. And so the pineapple sage would help her stomach a lot. And I forget what else we had. I had a few in my room, right? And I grew as little bushes and planters so that she could go and harvest whatever she needed, whenever she needed it. Anyway, eventually getting her nutrition together fixed her on all levels. So we rarely have any of those kinds of problems. Now she's 9, going to be 9. So if horses are out in pasture, they have a sense that they don't eat noxious weeds. Noxious weeds are sometimes they would taste it and be like, yeah, that tastes like terrible. So even if you had a pasture, and of course you have all these different weeds, probably 90% of them are going to be highly nutritious. They're growing in the grass. Let's talk about clover. Woo! Red clover is I used it, the dried red clover. I used it in tea elixirs that I made for about, a year straight. And so I would drink a tea size in the fridge, I'd make them. And I thought that I had neuropathy. And so I realize now that when people have neuropathy, they actually have blood clots and they actually have really thick blood. And so they lose a lot of different feeling, or the feeling is numbing, or it's weird, or it's electrical, or whatever. So after my brain cancer, I really got into everything that was anti-inflammatory, whether I was drinking it and eating it or blending it, juicing it, cooking with it, growing it, because that was my major concern was inflammation, because that's where all disease starts. And I didn't want to get a whole bunch of other problems that I didn't have. So I realized a lot of the neuropathy in my feet and my toes had to do with the fact that I had blood clots. I had many blood clots in my toes that were clogging the capillaries. So over time, drinking the red clover helped to release these and also get the blood flowing and keep the blood from clotting, which is inflammation. So a horse, eating out in the pasture is going to be eating a lot of natural things that are, medicine. And they're going to be able to manage their own health, and they're going to get the essential fatty acids, and they're going to get the plant medicines and all this other stuff as they munch along. Now, if they came to a poisonous plant, like I was talking about, a noxious weed, they're probably not going to eat it because it's probably going to give off a smell, or it's going to give off something that they don't like. They might taste it and then get the yucky look. And then they learn to avoid it. And also, if they're raised with their mother in a pasture, they watch the mother and what she's going to eat. And so they're eating right next to the mother. So they pick that up when they're young. So I think there's 8 noxious weeds or something like that in Nevada. But in hay, alfalfa hay, these weeds grow. In a pasture setting, the horse would walk away from them or eat around them. When they're forced to eat hay, they can't really break it up enough to dig out those dried noxious weeds. Now, because the noxious weeds are dried, we can suppose or, deduct that they're probably not as dangerous. But the fact is that if the horse is eating a bulk of this daily, then the liver starts to have problems. And so a lot of times I'll see horses that have back ends that are dragging. A lot of it has to do with the hay and the noxious weeds that they're eating in the hay. And it's totally affecting their liver in their spine. So in your spinal column, you have an area that helps deal with your liver, and it can actually, subluxate or compress or herniate or whatever at will because the liver is so off and toxic. So then you start to see the symptoms. So thing is, like, we have to like really start kind of going back to kind of some natural processes. And anyway, I just kind of want to put kind of all that out there. Like I said, the whole nutritional thing sometimes is really difficult to talk to people about with the horses. And the whole, short pinning is a huge topic where people get really pissed off and irritable. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there in case, people are watching this. And also I'll put some links at the bottom. I totally do consulting long distance, and I do some traveling, working on animals and people, and I also, work on them in person. So anyway, yeah, sometimes I've gone off where people have had, multiple horses and stayed a couple weeks and, worked on them all for them until they all were what I call holding. With all the stuff that is being changed. So anyway, that's it. I hope you liked this little talk, and I hope that you understood it. And if you have any questions, I'm offering first-time visit consults, long distance for $50. So it's a pretty good deal. All right. Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project, Bridget Lynn Dolgoff. Thank you. Bye.